They can also recognize faces and can hold a grudge against someone who was rude to them for several years.
Scientists just pumped 10,000 hours of crow recordings into a next-generation AI, expecting to find basic patterns in their behavior. What came back shattered everything they thought they knew. The AI blew open secrets these birds have been hiding from humanity for years. These crows have been surveilling us and actively spreading lies about us to each other. Their noise is not noise. It is a network so detailed, it has probably already identified you by name and is broadcasting your movements right now.
This bird is extremely difficult to find. It's in an area that has lots of places it can hide from a ground walking person.
And the deeper the AI clawed into the data, the darker and more disturbing it got. What it dragged out about these crows, their hidden agenda, and the plans they have in store for us is nothing short of horrifying. The moment AI cracked their code. "This is not what I expected," the researcher said, leaning back slowly from his screen. Not even close. He had been completely silent for nearly 4 minutes, the kind of silence that makes everyone in a room uncomfortable without knowing why. One by one, the team gathered behind him and stared at what the AI had produced. Then someone said quietly, "Are those people's locations?" They were. The AI had pulled specific home addresses, daily routes, and movement patterns directly out of the crow calls. Real people, real locations, mapped with a precision that left the entire team standing in stunned silence. The crows were not just communicating with each other, they were sharing information about specific humans, where they lived, where they went, what time they left, and what time they came back. One researcher looked up from the screen and said what everyone else was already thinking. These birds know exactly where we are at any given moment. But to truly feel the weight of that moment, you have to understand what set this whole thing in motion. Years before any AI entered the picture, a man walked into a field and found a crow lying on the ground. Its wing was shattered. It was letting out weak, broken caws, that raw, scraping sound crows make when something is deeply wrong. Its eyes were closing and opening slowly, fighting to stay present, losing the battle. It was clearly dying and in tremendous pain. The man killed it quickly to end its suffering and walked away believing he had done the right thing. He had absolutely no idea that in the seconds it took him to do that, something irreversible had been set in motion all around him. Every crow that witnessed it had just cataloged his face permanently, and within hours, that face was already moving through the local crow network like breaking news. Birds that had not even been present were receiving the information. He was being discussed, tracked, and remembered. Scientists had no idea how it happened until now. That discovery haunted scientists for years, because if crows were doing that, if they were passing specific information about specific humans through some kind of shared network, then the question became obvious and urgent. What exactly were they saying? How far was it traveling? And how sophisticated was the system carrying it? To find out, researchers built something nobody had attempted at this scale. They collected thousands of hours of crow recordings from across North America. Every sound those birds produced, every alarm, every call. Then they fed the entire archive into a machine learning system with one instruction: find what we cannot. You are right. That section reads like a textbook. Stiff, cold, no life in it at all. It explains instead of pulling you in. And some of those words are too heavy for the audience. Here's the thing though, the scientists were smart about this. They did not just dump thousands of hours of crow noise into a computer and hope for the best. They gave the AI the full picture around every single sound. So when a crow made a call, the AI knew everything happening at that exact moment. Was the crow eating? Resting? Did a human just walk into the area? Was there a hawk nearby? Had the crow been completely silent for a long time before that call? The AI was not just hearing sounds. It was watching the whole situation. At first, nothing shocking came back. The AI found the same things scientists had already known for years. The call crows make when a predator shows up, the sound they make around food, the noise they make when they are hurt or trapped. Expected stuff. Honestly, for a while, it looked like this whole expensive study was just going to confirm things researchers already knew. Then, the AI kept going, deeper than any human ear had ever reached, and it found something that nobody in that room was ready for. Hidden inside the recordings were tiny changes in the actual shape of certain sounds. Not louder, not faster. The shape itself was different, and these changes were so small that no human being had ever detected them in all the years scientists had been studying crows. But to the AI, they showed up every single time. Consistent, exact, like a fingerprint that never changes. And one particular change appeared every single time one specific person entered the monitored area. The moment that individual came within range, the shift appeared in the crow calls. The moment they left, it disappeared. Every single time, without exception. The researchers stared at that pattern for a long time before the full meaning of it landed. The crows had not simply remembered a human being. They had created a sound specifically for that human being, a vocal tag, an identifier, something that functioned in every meaningful way, exactly like a name. And every time that person appeared, the name went out across the network and every crow within range received it. This was not instinct. This was not reflex. This was a communication system. Organized, structured, socially maintained, and operating in plain sight directly above human civilization, while we spent centuries calling it noise. But then something happened during the study itself that pushed everything into stranger territory. One of the crows in a monitored zone began producing a sound the researchers had never heard a crow make before. Not a natural call, not anything from the existing catalog of crow vocalizations. It was a near-perfect reproduction of the electronic alert tone the research equipment produced every time it flagged an unusual sound. That tone was mechanical, artificial, the kind of sound that has never existed anywhere in the natural world. The crow had simply heard it enough times and absorbed it. That alone would have been remarkable. Crows are known mimics, and that is not secret knowledge. But what stopped the researchers cold was the context. The crow did not produce that sound at random. It produced it specifically during active monitoring sessions when the researchers were present and the equipment was running. Only then, never otherwise. It had not just copied a sound. It appeared to understand when that sound was meaningful, and it was deploying it accordingly. Around the same time, a separate research team at the University of Lyon collected over 150,000 individual crow vocalizations from a single crow family and ran the entire set through AI analysis. The finding that came back was one of the most quietly unsettling in the entire field. A significant portion of the communication was occurring at frequencies physically beyond the range of human hearing. Not difficult to hear, impossible. Which means crows had been conducting full conversations in our presence, in our parks, above our streets, outside our windows, for thousands of years. And we were biologically incapable of hearing a single word. A 2019 study then confirmed something that gave the whole picture a colder edge. Crows deliberately modify their communication when they want to conceal information. They suppress certain calls. They drop to quieter frequencies. They withhold strategically. They decide, consciously and deliberately, what gets shared and what does not, in a way that mirrors human behavior so closely it is almost uncomfortable to acknowledge. These birds are capable of lying by saying nothing at all. Before scientists had decoded a single word of what crows were actually saying about us, the research had already established something deeply unsettling. These birds were not making emotional noise. They were running an information network, shaping the data based on the outcome they wanted. And what the AI found when it kept listening was about to become extremely personal. They recognize and they've told their friends. You need to know about John Marsluff before this next part hits properly, because without his experiment, what follows just sounds like bad luck. With it, it sounds like something else entirely. Marsluff was a wildlife biologist at the University of Washington. In 2006, he designed a study to find out exactly how personally crows took their encounters with human beings. He and his team went onto campus and trapped 7 crows. During the trapping, the researchers wore rubber masks with specific human faces molded into them. These were the dangerous faces, the ones the crows would forever connect with the experience of being caught. During neutral activities afterward, feeding the birds, moving calmly around campus, the team wore completely different masks, friendly ones. The trapped crows were released unharmed and the campus returned to normal. Years passed. Then Marsluff walked back onto that campus wearing the dangerous mask. What happened in the next few minutes would go on to be cited in scientific literature around the world. Out of 53 crows he encountered that day, 47 attacked him without hesitation, screaming, dive bombing, coming close enough to rake the air beside his skull. Every researcher who wore that mask anywhere on campus got the same treatment. Every researcher in the friendly mask was left completely alone. And here is the part that changes how you think about everything. Only 7 crows had been present during the original trapping. The other 40 had never witnessed a single moment of it. They had simply been told. The original birds had communicated the threat to the wider flock, including to birds that had hatched long after the event. Young crows who had never once seen Marsleff's real face were attacking him based entirely on a description passed down by birds who had. The study ran for 17 years. The hostility only finally faded when most of the original 7 were dead. Now take that out of the controlled environment of a university campus and put it into an ordinary neighborhood, because that is where it gets truly frightening. In Chatsworth, South Africa, a 9-year-old boy accidentally broke a crow's egg while playing near a fence one afternoon. The crow that witnessed it was dead within 2 months, hit by a car. But the attacks on the boy continued without interruption. A new generation of crows took over seamlessly, targeting him specifically every single day. His mother started walking him to school every morning with an open umbrella held over his head like armor, to protect her child from birds, because of an egg he never meant to break. When this story broke the internet, one software specialist, Gene Carter, shared his own experience. Carter was a software specialist in Seattle who spotted crows moving toward a robin's nest one afternoon and grabbed the nearest thing to drive them off. One swing. He was back inside within seconds and thought nothing more of it. The crows thought quite a lot more of it. Within days, they were assembled outside his kitchen window, not flying, not making noise, just watching him through the glass with a stillness that made his skin crawl. When he moved to another room, they found a new perch with a clear sightline to him and started screaming. When he walked to his car, they came out of the sky at his head. When he arrived at his bus stop each morning, they were already there waiting. The walk home from the bus every evening was a gauntlet, every single day, for almost a full year. Carter eventually surrendered completely and moved to a different part of the city. 11 months of daily targeted psychological torment for one swing of a rake. These birds had logged his face, moved his description through the network, and built a coordinated campaign around a single human being that followed him across an entire city. In Vancouver, the website CrowTracks has been documenting attacks since 2016. Over 8,000 reports from that city alone, around 1,500 new ones every year. The accounts from victims describe something visceral and genuinely frightening. The bird arrives from behind, no sound, no warning. It hits the back of the skull first, drives its talons into the hair, grips down to the scalp, and holds. People claw at it with both hands while the wings beat hard against both sides of their head. When it finally releases, they are standing in the street with blood moving down the back of their neck and soaking into their collar. One woman named Lisa Joyce was hit 8 separate times in a single evening by the same crow, while dozens of people walked past her completely untouched. The bird ignored all of them. It came back for her every time. She eventually changed her route to work permanently just to avoid one stretch of road. In Dulwich, a suburb of South London, attacks became so persistent and so targeted that some residents stopped going outside during certain parts of the day. A woman named Alison Freen was struck on 3 separate occasions simply getting out of her parked car. And then there is Shiva Kewat. Kewat lives in Bhopal, India, and one afternoon he noticed a baby crow caught in iron netting. He reached in and spent several desperate minutes trying to free it. The chick died in his hands while he was still trying to save it. He was heartbroken. He had not hurt it. He had been fighting for its life. But the crows perched nearby, watching the whole thing, saw only one image: a human being holding one of their own in the moments before it went still. The attack started almost immediately. That was 3 years ago. They have not stopped. Kewat carries a stick every time he steps outside now. Every single one of these people had one thing in common. A crow had seen them. What they did was talked about, passed around, and spread to birds that were not even there when it happened. And when the AI started tracing exactly how far that information actually traveled through the crow network, what came back shocked everyone in that room. The citywide surveillance network. The footage that changed everything in this part of the study almost looked boring at first glance. A man walked into a monitored area holding a long stick. A crow spotted him, produced a sharp alarm call, and within seconds, every crow in the surrounding area was locked onto this specific individual. Then later, the same day, the man returned. Same face, same build, same clothes. But his hands were empty. He walked through the exact same route. Not one crow responded. They watched him move through their territory and made no sound at all. The research team replayed that footage multiple times, and what it showed was not simple recognition. The crow had not flagged this man as dangerous. It had flagged as dangerous only when he was holding a stick. The moment the stick was gone, the threat classification was gone with it. These birds were not operating on basic facial recognition. They were reading context, assessing probable intent, and broadcasting a nuanced judgment to every bird in range. From a distance, it looked like a crow making noise. Up close, it was something making a calculated decision. And those decisions were moving across entire cities with a speed that genuinely alarmed the researchers. The relay system works like this. One crow produces a specific call. A crow within hearing range picks it up and repeats it. Another crow further out does the same. The chain extends outward, block by block, bird by bird. Researchers established that crows can hear each other from up to a full mile away. In a city with thousands of crows distributed across every neighborhood, that means a single message can travel from one edge of the city to the opposite side in the time it takes most people to drink a cup of coffee. And the network does not even limit itself to crows. Crows do not just spy using other crows. They use completely different bird species too. Take the Steller's jay. When a jay spots a predator nearby, it screams loudly. It is not trying to help crows. It is warning other jays. That is it. That is the whole intention. But the crows hear that scream and immediately go on high alert. They did not see the predator themselves. They did not need to. Another bird just did all the work for them without even knowing it. Researchers found that crows do this with multiple different bird species. Basically, every bird in the area that makes any kind of warning sound is unknowingly feeding information straight into the crow network. These birds never signed up for that. They are just trying to protect themselves. But crows are listening to all of it and using every single bit of it. And the alerts moving through this network are not simple one-time warnings either. Kevin McGowan from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology spent years studying exactly how crow alarm calls work. And what he found is wild. Crows do not just make one sound that means danger and leave it at that. They run what is basically a live news update. The call they make when a hawk is far away sounds different from the call they make when that same hawk is getting closer. And when that hawk is right there and everyone needs to move immediately, that is a completely different call altogether. The whole thing updates in real time as the situation changes. What that means for you specifically is this. If you have ever done anything within sight of a crow and you live near any urban area, there is a genuine chance that birds across multiple surrounding neighborhoods already have a working file on you, assembled from second-hand and third-hand accounts that pass through the relay without you ever being aware of it. But the size of the network was not the detail that disturbed the researchers most, because the AI had been finding something else entirely inside those same recordings. Something quieter than alarm calls and threat assessments. Something that the more the system analyzed it, the more it sounded like something deeply uncomfortably personal. What they're actually saying about us. Here is the finding that stopped everyone cold. Out of everything the AI found in those recordings, this one hit differently. Humans showed up in crow conversations more than predators did, more than food, more than other crows, more than anything else. So, what exactly are they saying about us? The AI went looking for the answer, and what it found genuinely disturbed the researchers. Deep inside the recordings, the system kept pulling out long vocal sequences it had never seen before. Not alarm calls, not feeding calls, not any sound that matched anything scientists had ever documented in crow behavior. The AI had no category for them at all. At first, the team thought the system was simply making an error. Maybe it had misread the data somewhere. So they went back and looked at exactly what was happening around the crows every single time those mystery sounds appeared. And that is when everything went quiet in the room. Those sounds kept appearing around the same people, specific humans being brought up again and again, and not just immediately after something happened, days later. The crows were still making those sounds days after an encounter with a particular person. Like they were sitting there going back over it, replaying it, talking about it amongst themselves long after the person had gone home and completely forgotten the whole thing. Think about that for a second. You walk down a street, nothing dramatic happens. You go home, eat dinner, go to sleep. But above that street, the crows are still going, still making those sounds, still, apparently, talking about you, about what you did, about what kind of person you are, long after you left. But it got even stranger than that. The AI started picking up something inside those recordings that nobody expected to find. Arguments, real ones. Not just one crow making noise at another. Actual back and forth exchanges between multiple birds. One crow would make a sound, another would respond, then another would jump in. The sounds kept escalating, getting more intense, more urgent, cutting over each other. Then, eventually, they would settle down and go quiet. Like a disagreement that finally reached a conclusion. Now here is where it gets wild. Scientists had seen this exact same pattern before, in crows, but only in one specific situation. When the leader of a crow group disappeared, the remaining birds would go through this same intense vocal back and forth while they figured out who was now in charge. It was essentially crows having a heated meeting to settle something important. But in these recordings, that same pattern was happening for a completely different reason. It was happening because of specific humans. The crows were not just remembering people, they were arguing about them. The person who leaves food out every morning, the man who threw something at a crow years ago, the woman who walks past quietly every single day. They appeared to be group discussions, like a neighborhood meeting where everyone has an opinion and not everyone agrees. Right now, somewhere above an ordinary street in your city, crows may literally be in the middle of an argument about what kind of person you are. And they may have been having that argument since the very first day you walked into their territory. And then the AI caught something that made the researchers deeply uneasy. Certain arguments were not finishing in one session. The same birds were returning to the exact same spot day after day, picking up the same heated exchange and continuing it. Day 1, day 2, day 3, still going, still unresolved. Researchers had absolutely no framework for this. They had never seen crows argue about something across multiple days before. The only thing any of them could compare it to was a human disagreement so serious that one conversation simply was not enough to settle it. Nobody in that room could say for certain what the crows were arguing about. But some of the researchers had a quiet suspicion that whoever lived nearest to that spot would not have been very comfortable knowing the answer. Then the study went somewhere that genuinely made people uncomfortable. The AI kept pulling out a specific type of sound from the recordings, softer than the others, lower, and these sounds almost always appeared after the same thing happened. A crow had died. That is when researcher Kaylee Swift's work became important. Swift had spent years doing one very specific thing, watching what crows do when one of their own dies. And what she saw was strange in a way that is hard to shake. When a crow dies, other crows show up, not just one or two. Sometimes entire groups arrive. They circle around the body. Some of them walk right up to it and gently touch it with their beaks. And then something happens that Swift said always gave her pause. The whole group goes quiet. Not the normal quiet of birds just sitting around. Something different. A heavy, deliberate silence that feels almost purposeful. Like everyone in the group has agreed without speaking that this is not the moment for noise. Most people who hear this assume the crows are grieving. It looks exactly like that. It feels like that. And that is exactly what researchers thought too, at first. But Swift ran controlled experiments. And what she found underneath all that apparent grief was something much colder. The crows were not primarily there to mourn. They were there to investigate. They were trying to figure out what happened. And more than anything else, they were trying to figure out who was responsible. After the silent gathering came, something Swift's team started calling the post-investigation dispersal. The crows would scatter outward from the spot where the body was found and start making a specific sound at multiple points across the surrounding area. The same sound, repeated, spreading outward in every direction. Swift believes this was the verdict being broadcast. Whoever the flock had decided was responsible for the death, that information was now moving through the network in real time, like a group chat going off all at once. The funeral and the trial were happening at the same time. And by the time the body was cold, the verdict was already traveling. To test this, researchers ran an experiment that produced results nobody was comfortable with. A person simply walked up and stood near a dead crow. That was it. No violence, No involvement of any kind, just standing there. The flock immediately identified that person as a threat and burned their face into collective memory. For the next 6 weeks, those crows attacked that specific individual on sight every single time they encountered them. 6 weeks. From one moment of simply being nearby, no proof needed, no evidence beyond the fact that they were there. In the crow justice system, proximity to the body is enough to open a case against you, and there is no appeal. Then, right when the study felt like it could not get any heavier, the AI found something that genuinely surprised everyone in the room. Something warm sitting at the very end of all that darkness. Certain locations in the recordings kept showing up with a very specific type of call around them. And when researchers looked into what was happening at those locations, they found something that made them smile before it made them think. Crows were leaving gifts for people, not dropping random objects by accident, choosing specific things and deliberately placing them for specific humans. In Seattle, an 8-year-old girl named Gabby Mann had been feeding crows near her home since 2011. Simple enough, just a little girl who liked birds. But after a while, the crows started leaving things for her in return. A heart-shaped bead, a tiny piece of metal stamped with the word best, small earrings, buttons, pieces of colored glass, over 100 individual items over the years. And they did not just drop these things randomly during the day, they waited. They waited specifically for Gabby to come outside. Then they placed the objects where she would find them, an entire network of wild birds bringing chosen gifts to one specific little girl. A man named Stuart Dahlquist spent 4 years feeding a local crow family in a neighborhood northeast of Seattle. One morning, he stepped outside and found a small pine sprig sitting outside his door. That alone would have been easy to dismiss, but threaded carefully through one end of it was a metal soda tab, not lying beside it, not accidentally tangled in it. Threaded through it deliberately, 2 separate objects combined into one thing and left there for him. The next morning, another one appeared in exactly the same spot. Dahlquist walked around the entire neighborhood looking for any other explanation. He found nothing. The AI found that these gift locations all had something in common. They were surrounded by specific call patterns that researchers now believe represent trust, loyalty, something that functions very closely to gratitude, which means the crows were not only passing around warnings about dangerous people, they were passing around good reports too, positive ones. This person is safe. This person can be trusted. This person is worth protecting. And that is when the full picture finally became clear. And honestly, it is one of the most unsettling things to sit with. Every single person living in an area where crows are present has a reputation inside that network. Not a rough impression, not a vague feeling. A detailed, constantly updated record built from things crows directly witnessed, things other crows told them, judgments made around deaths, arguments settled over multiple days above ordinary streets. All of it built without you knowing. All of it shared with birds you have never seen and will never see. Your reputation in the crow world has been growing for years, and you have had absolutely no say in any of it. And then, in the very last days of the study, buried inside the final layer of data, the researchers found something that made them stop completely. Something that made at least a few of them ask a question out loud that they would not have felt comfortable asking at the start of any of this. What if the crows already knew we were listening? The moment they realized we were listening, nobody was prepared for what the AI flagged in the final recordings. Buried inside the audio from the closing weeks of the study was a vocal pattern that had not appeared anywhere in the previous thousands of hours of material. Not once, not a fragment, not a partial match, nothing. This sound had simply not existed in the dataset before a very specific point in time. And that point in time was not the beginning of the study. It was not the early weeks. It was the period when the microphones were live and the researchers were actively decoding crow communication in real time, when human beings were, for the first time in the entire history of this species, sitting down and genuinely listening. The AI could not place the pattern in any known category. When the researchers finally gathered around the audio and tried to describe what they were hearing, 2 words kept coming up independently from different people in the room: correction, question. As though something in those recordings was responding to the fact of being analyzed. As though something was saying things have changed here, or, more unsettlingly, you have been noticed. Then the field reports arrived and made it harder to dismiss as speculation. In the final weeks of active monitoring, researchers working at 2 completely separate field locations documented the same behavior without any communication between their teams. At each site, a crow landed directly on the recording equipment and produced a sustained, directed vocalization into the microphone at close range. Not a quick peck of curiosity. Extended, deliberate. The bird was oriented toward the device and vocalizing at it with what every observer described as clear intention. One researcher who sat with that footage afterward said it was among the most genuinely unsettling experiences of her professional life. She kept having to consciously remind herself that what she was watching was a bird. The neuroscience made dismissal increasingly difficult. John Marsloff's earlier research had already established that crow brains contain a structure functioning in a remarkably similar way to the human amygdala. That is the region responsible for threat detection, for the primal, deeply physical awareness of being watched. It is what activates when a creature senses that something nearby is paying it focused, deliberate attention. When a brain built like that detects observation, it does not ignore the signal. It processes it emotionally. It runs a risk assessment. It produces a behavioral response. The strange new vocal pattern in the final recordings was not coming from a creature operating on blind reflex. It was coming from something neurologically equipped to recognize surveillance, emotionally interpret what that surveillance might mean, and choose how to respond. And then the deepest layer of AI analysis on that unknown pattern produced the finding that stopped the lead researchers in place. Embedded inside the new call structure were acoustic signatures measurably similar to the individual identifier tags the crows had already been documented, using to track and name specific humans. The same mechanism, the same acoustic architecture. The researchers could not say definitively what it meant. But the possibility that settled over the room, quietly and without anyone wanting to be the first to say it out loud, was this. The pattern was not simply a reaction to being studied. It may have been a classification, a file being opened. Not on a dangerous human or a trusted one, on the researchers themselves. The crows may not have just noticed they were being studied. They may have begun studying back. One member of the research team described the feeling of that realization in a way that has stayed with everyone who heard it. He said it felt like discovering that humanity had spent its entire existence living next door to another civilization without ever once suspecting it was there. Generation after generation, walking beneath telephone wires and across open ground, while something above them watched, communicated, remembered, judged, and kept records. And never once did we stop to consider that the noise above our heads might be a language containing things we genuinely needed to hear. Right now, outside wherever you are reading this, crows are watching. Based on everything this research uncovered, they are doing something far more intricate than making sound. They are running a communication network that recognizes your face, tracks your patterns, debates your character, and files reports about you that outlast the individual birds who write them. They have almost certainly been doing this since long before you were born. And they did all of it while we looked up at them and heard nothing but noise. We were too certain of our own superiority to imagine that something looking down at us might actually understand what it was seeing. But now, finally, we are listening. And somewhere out there, on a wire above an ordinary street, a crow is watching you read this. The question that no researcher has been able to answer is the one that matters most now. Now that they know we are listening, what are they going to say next?